I intend to hold these banks fully accountable for the assistance they receive, and this time they will have to clearly demonstrate how taxpayer dollars result in more lending for the American taxpayer.
Welcome back to Hardball. Michael Waldman was a speechwriter for President Bill Clinton. He's now the executive director of the Brennan Center for Justice. Mike, thank you for joining us. Well, did he meet Bill Clinton's standard there to have a guaranteed at the end that we can do this thing? An absolute certitude the president wants to see from the new president. Did he deliver it?
Well, you know, these speeches are tough, and there's a tendency to try to say, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, we'll pass health care. But I thought he really found his presidential voice and really hit his mark with this speech. It was really something. Barack Obama's obviously a brilliant orator, brought oratory back in a way to politics in a way we haven't seen in a long time. Yeah. But there's been a real difference between the speeches when he talks about the history of the country and values on the one hand, and on the other hand, when he talks about policy, sometimes there's a drop-off. He sounds more perfunctory. Here, he really explained. He was very forceful. He was very urgent. And, you know, for example, in the middle of the speech, he did almost a little fireside chat on banking, explaining the banking crisis.
Yeah, I liked that. I liked it. Yeah,
it was really something. Really something.
I like that. I thought when I went into it, I said, can he prove tonight he has a grip on the problem? Yeah, he seemed to have a grip on the problem. He seemed to understand it and have some sense of how we're going to get out of it. I like that. What did you make of the populist stuff in there? The shots at the wealthy corporate leaders with their jets. Well, let's take a look. And here's a... Well, what do you think of that? Here he is, by the way. Here's a piece of that speech tonight.
This time, CEOs won't be able to use taxpayer money to pad their paychecks or buy fancy drapes or disappear on a private jet. Those days are over.
God, that was Huey Long or Father Coughlin or whatever. I don't know who it was, but it was definitely a populist shot there.
It was not something you would have heard the last 8 years or the last 30 years. I mean, we haven't heard something like that in that chamber since the 60s, or maybe really since the 40s and the 30s. And it was really interesting because, you know, populism takes two forms in this country, as you know. Conservative populism tends to be kind of cultural, and you might have heard Ronald Reagan talk about welfare cheats or government as the enemy, welfare queens.
Right.
And liberals, progressives have had a harder time dealing with economic populism. And he didn't really, I didn't think he declared class warfare. He was talking about people who were taking taxpayer money and who weren't being responsible. He was talking about, you know, public employees now, basically the CEOs of the banks. So I thought it's a tough thing to do. You could scare people off, but I thought he did it pretty well by rooting it in these values of core American responsibility and not, you know, putting up fancy drapes.
Boy, there's the stunning First Lady. I have to tell you, he made a smart move. We didn't have to check the polls on this, but her poll numbers are through the roof. I noticed that his